however we get there is kind of immaterial. Getting there is what's important. As far as this kind of knowledge, this kind of understanding that love is the answer, I think it is probably not going to evolve primarily from the theory to the action, as it will evolve from people realizing that being fearful is dysfunctional. They'll look at their reality and say, look at this place we live in. You know, all the strife, all the greed, all the warring, all this. There's something wrong with this. We need to do better. We need to care about each other. We need to cooperate. And they will see that not as the result of a theory that leads them to that, but just as a practical result of life, that if you care about others, then your life, their life, everybody's life will be better off. And it's a matter of the carrot and the stick. You know, if you want to train a donkey, you need carrots and sticks. You know, and the carrot, of course, is the fact that if you are kind, really kind, not just acting kind, but if you are kind and you do care, then your life will be positive. You'll live in joy, and your relationships will be good. And if you're very fearful, you will live in stress, and your relationships will always be challenging and won't be very good. So just through trial and error, people just being aware of what works and won't, I think that is probably going to nudge people to realize that, no, we do need to care about each other. This does need to be one human family. We have to get along. And as much as we're self-centered and it's all about us and, you know, how can I use you, is the attitude that we're going to have dysfunction. Eventually, I think we'll tend to see that. And when we do, it'll be so much easier to understand that we're all one, that we're all connected, and that we all have to kind of grow up together and be each other's teachers. And we'll kind of get that. So I think that's probably the practical way that it will go, rather than everybody being converted to a theory that brings them to love and peace. I think that is unlikely to happen that way, which is why we have had these, let me call them bubbles of enlightenment in all nations, all cultures, over all time, but they've always been in the margins. So 2,500 years ago, we had the Buddha that said this reality, you know, is an illusion, and that love is the answer. And that made a difference. There were a lot of, you know, people who followed him and they learned, but it never got into the mainstream. And it's bubbled up in the margins. And we all are just waiting for the day when the margins grow up and become so big that they overwhelm and become the mainstream. But that has never taken place. And I suspect it's more likely that the mainstream is going to get slowly kinder and gentler to where it becomes open to the Buddha's message or Christ's message, or, you know, I mean, we can go through all the religions. I don't need to single one out here. That they eventually will get to the point that they have grown up enough to get it, to see it, and to be it. Because if they just learn about it intellectually, there's lots of people who call themselves Buddhists or Christians or whatever, and they have read about it. Intellectually, they know what is right, but they have never owned it. They've never become it. They may act kinder. They may act more caring because they think they should. That's what their intellect says. That is the right way to be, but they're not it yet. And there's a big step between being kind and acting kind. And until people are ready to get that and make that transition into living it, just, you know, explaining it to them and preaching doesn't help. They have to grow up to the point where they're ready to change who they are at a fundamental level. And I think this getting ready is where the action is now. And when people get ready, the philosophy will be there. One of these 10,000 paths to the truth will be there to pick them up and give them a structure beneath which they can place their newfound understanding. and suddenly it'll allow them to move more quickly. So I think that the key thing that has to happen first is we have to get enough people who are ready. And I think we're accelerating toward that goal. I'm an optimist. I think we're getting there faster and faster. And that's because the world has shrunk.
Yeah.
You know, the world isn't quite yet the size of a family, but it's getting there.